to think cool cars had to be loud and flashy. Until I discovered the magic of 90s sleeper cars. These stealthy beasts packed enough power to embarrass even the flashiest supercars. Today I'm counting down 11 sleeper cars of the 1990s that prove looks can be deceiving. Starting off with number 11, the 1995 Volvo 850 T5R is what happens when Swedish engineers get tired of people making jokes about their boxy cars. This wagon was actually called Cream Yellow T5R, and it became such a signature that people still call it the Forbidden Banana. Under that squared-off hood sat a turbocharged 2.3-liter inline-5 that Porsche helped develop. Yeah, Porsche. The same guys making 911s were tinkering with Volvo engines. It produced 240 horsepower and 221 pound-feet of torque through a 4-speed automatic that, surprisingly, didn't suck. 0 to 60, 6.9 seconds. Quarter mile, 15.2 seconds. In 1995, that was quick enough to embarrass a lot of dedicated sports cars. Interestingly, Volvo gave it Pirelli P0 tires, the same rubber you'd find on a Ferrari. The suspension was dropped, stiffened, and tuned to handle way better than any Volvo had a right to. They even modified the ECU to provide a 5-second overboost function, bumping power to 250 horses when you really needed to shock someone. Volvo built exactly 6,964 of these globally. In America, we got just 185 wagons and 139 sedans. At $38,000 in 1995 money, about 70 grand today. It wasn't cheap. But you weren't just buying a fast Volvo. You were buying the car that changed how the world looked at Volvo forever. It's the reason we got the R models and later the Polestar cars. At number 10 is the 1990 Mercury Cougar XR7. With this model, Ford decided to go full sleeper mode with their luxury brand. Most people remember the Cougar as that cushy personal luxury coupe your aunt drove to bingo. But the XR7 version was different. Ford's special vehicle team took that comfortable cruiser and turned it into something that could go toe-to-toe with the IROC Camaros. The heart of this cat was a 3.8-liter Essex V6 with an Eaton M90 supercharger bolted on. It produced around 210 horsepower, but the torque was where the real magic happened. 315 pound-feet at just 2,600 RPM. That's V8 territory from a V6, folks. And unlike most supercharged engines of the era, this one didn't sound like a blender full of bolts. It was smooth, refined, and when you wanted to play, it had a subtle whine that meant business. The XR7 also received a completely retuned suspension with progressive rate springs, bigger sway bars, and faster steering. The brakes were beefed up with dual piston calipers up front, and they even added a 3-mode electronically adjustable suspension in 1990. Sport mode actually made a difference, dropping the ride height and firming things up enough to make the car feel like it shed 500 pounds. The XR7 could hit 60 miles per hour in 7.2 seconds and run the quarter mile in 15.5 seconds. Numbers that would make plenty of V8s nervous. Mercury built about 2,200 supercharged XR7s, and 841 of those came with the 5-speed manual. The price tag was $19,999, about 45 grand today, but it's pretty rare to find one now. Most got driven hard and put away wet, and good luck finding parts for that supercharger setup. Next at number 9 is the 1995 Ford Thunderbird SC. It features the same supercharged V6 as its Mercury cousin, but it's tuned to 230 horsepower and an impressive 330 pound-feet of torque. The manual transmission version actually received better intercooling than the automatic, making it the hot ticket for those in the know. The SC came with an adjustable suspension that would make modern systems blush. You could literally watch the car lower itself at speed through the digital display, proper Buck Rogers stuff for 95. And those brakes, 4-wheel disc brakes with ABS that could stop this 3,800-pound cruiser from 60 miles per hour in just 119 feet. That's better than some modern sports cars, no joke. Ford only built about 5,000 Super Coupes in '95, and they went all out on the details. The interior featured fantastic leather seats with suede inserts that would still look good in a new car today. The gauge cluster was a beautiful analog-digital hybrid that actually worked, unlike most 90s digital dashes that died faster than Vanilla Ice's career. I've got to tell you about the sleeper factor. This thing was stealth wealth before that was even a term. No hood scoops, no wild spoilers, just subtle SC badges and a slight bulge in the hood. Rolling in at number 8, the 1991 Toyota Camry all-track is probably the last car you'd expect on this list. But man, Toyota really pulled a fast one with this sleeper. Under that completely forgettable exterior sat a 2.0-liter turbocharged four-banger, pushing 200 horsepower to all four wheels. It used the same basic all-wheel drive system as the Celica GT4, yeah, the actual rally car. Toyota only brought about 3,000 of these sleepers to the States, and finding one today is like finding Jimmy Hoffa. They were so good at being invisible that most people never knew what they were looking at. The only telltale signs were a subtle all-track badge and a slight hood bulge that most probably looked like a manufacturing defect. At $25,900, it cost almost as much as a BMW 318i. But while the Bimmer was busy being obvious about its sporting pretensions, the all-track was out there quietly embarrassing sports cars in the rain. It's the kind of car that makes you question everything you think you know about boring Japanese sedans. Lucky number 7 brings us to the 1993 Oldsmobile Achieva SCX. Before you start laughing, let me school you on why this might be GM's best-kept secret. GM literally had to homologate this car for SCCA racing. That's right, this Oldsmobile was built for the track. The heart of this beast was the W41 Package's high-output Quad 4. Now, I've worked on plenty of these engines, and let me tell you, this wasn't your regular Quad 4. We're talking 4 valves per cylinder, dual overhead cams, and 7,000 RPM redline. In '93, that was exotic car territory. The engine made 190 horses and 160 pound-feet of torque. But here's the insider secret, it actually dynoed higher on the regular. The W41 package came with a GetRag 5-speed that was practically bulletproof. They even provided a specific final drive ratio of 3.94 to 1. That's serious gearing, folks. Throw in the FE3 suspension with special springs, dampers, and sway bars, and you had yourself a legitimate giant killer. Only 500 of these were ever built, and each received special transmission and engine coolers straight from the factory. At $19,995, the SCX could hit 60 miles per hour in 7.1 seconds and pull 0.89 G on the skid pad. Those are serious numbers even today, but in a car that looked like it belonged in a rental fleet, pure sleeper gold. Hitting number 6 is the 1992 Dodge Spirit RT. This thing was the 4-door equivalent of dropping a nuclear bomb on the performance car world. When it launched, it was literally the fastest mass-produced sedan in America. Not the most expensive, not the most prestigious, just the fastest. It featured a 2.2-liter Turbo 3 engine that Chrysler developed with Lotus. Yeah, that Lotus. We're talking 16 valves, dual overhead cams, an intercooler the size of a briefcase, and 14 pounds of boost. That's how you get 224 horsepower and 217 pound-feet of torque from a 4-banger in 1992. The Turbo 3 boasted a forged crank, special pistons with oil squirters, and sodium-filled exhaust valves. This was legit race engine tech in a family sedan. The only transmission, a heavy-duty GetRag 5-speed manual. No automatic option. Chrysler knew exactly what they were building. Dodge only built 1,208 Spirit RTs. They were selling for $17,820, less than half the price of the German sports sedans they were outclassing. The RT would run the quarter mile in 14.5 seconds and hit 60 miles per hour in 5.8 seconds. That's faster than an E34 BMW M5 that cost 3 times as much. But you know what really makes me laugh? The Spirit RT came with a special front air dam and a tiny spoiler, yet most people thought it was just dealer-installed dress-up. Meanwhile, this unassuming Dodge was out there running with Corvettes. That's the essence of a sleeper right there. Breaking into our top 5 is the 1999 Ford Taurus SHO. Ford somehow convinced Yamaha to build them a 235 horsepower V8 engine, then stuffed it into their family sedan. I remember the first time I heard one of these things start up. The Yamaha V8 had a distinct growl that made you do a double take. Here's the thing, that engine was actually designed to produce way more power, but Ford dialed it back to 235 horses to keep the transmission from giving up the ghost. Some of the guys I know who've worked on these say it's good for well over 300 horses with the right tweaks. Speaking of tweaks, let me tell you about the coolest part that nobody talks about, the intake manifold. Yamaha used a crazy individual runner setup with variable length runners. When you hit 4,000 RPM, the butterflies would open up and suddenly you'd get a second wave of power. It's like having two engines in one. The transmission story is wild too. They had to beef up the AX4N trans just to handle all that torque, even adding a special fluid cooler system. And get this, every SHO got upgraded brake calipers from the police package Taurus. Ford wasn't messing around. You want to know something really nuts? They only built 3,368 of these in '99, and finding one today that hasn't been beaten to death? Man, that's like finding an honest politician. Most people thought it was just another Taurus with fancy wheels, but at $29,550, this thing could hang with a BMW 540i, all while looking like something from Enterprise. Cruising into number 4, the 1994 Mazda 626 GT Turbo is the definition of hiding in plain sight. Mazda took their regular 626, stuffed a turbocharged V6 under the hood, and then acted like nothing had happened. Check this out, that 2.5-liter V6 pushed 164 horsepower, but that's not the full story. The torque curve on these things was insane. It pulled like a freight train from 2,000 RPM onward. And if you were lucky enough to find one with a 5-speed manual, pure magic. The shifter feel was classic Mazda, like racking the slide on a well-oiled 1911. These cars shared some suspension components with the first-gen MX-6, which was basically a sports car in disguise. The GT Turbo received special damper tuning, thicker sway bars, and impressive four-wheel disc brakes with a progressive rate pedal feel that you just don't get anymore. Only about 1,100 of these sleepers made it to the States. Mazda didn't exactly advertise them. It's as if they were trying to keep it a secret. The only way you'd know you were looking at a GT Turbo was by a tiny badge on the trunk and specific 15-inch alloys that honestly looked pretty tame. At $21,995, it was priced like a regular family sedan, but it's the kind of car that makes you wonder what other hidden gems are out there, disguised as everyday transportation. Bronze medal goes to the 1991 Mitsubishi Galant VR4. Before the Evo became a household name, this was Mitsubishi's secret weapon. Most people don't know this, but the VR4 was developed alongside their Group A rally car. Every single piece of tech they learned from racing went straight into this sleeper. The engine, a 4G63T, yeah. The same basic architecture later used in the Evo, but this version was special. A twin-scroll turbo setup, forged internals, and an air-to-air intercooler that looked like it belonged in a jet engine. It produced 237 horses and the boost would hit around 3,000 RPM. The all-wheel drive system in the VR4 was far more advanced than what most supercars had at the time. Dynamic four-wheel steering, active suspension that adjusted dampening rates 1,000 times per second, and a center diff that could split torque in a flash. In 1991, this was some serious spacecraft technology. Only about 1,000 of these made it stateside. Most people thought it was just another Japanese family sedan with some fancy badges. At $25,000, this car could sprint to 60 miles per hour in 6.5 seconds, pull over 0.87 G on the skid pad, and hang with cars costing 3 times as much. Our runner-up is the 1990 Eagle Talon TSI all-wheel drive, possibly the most misunderstood performance car of the 90s. Diamond Star Motors built something special here, a perfect sleeper sports car. Every TSI all-wheel drive was essentially hand-assembled. The 4G63 turbo engine was rated at 195 horsepower, but I've yet to see a stock one that didn't dyno higher. They used special closed-ratio 5-speed transmissions that were practically bulletproof. I know guys who've pushed 400 horses through them without issues. The coolest part about the TSI was its split personality. The all-wheel drive system features a vicious center coupling that transferred power faster than most modern systems. And the suspension geometry, pure race car stuff. They even reinforced the front strut towers because they knew owners would modify these things. With only about 800 units produced, finding a clean TSI all-wheel drive is tough. At $17,999 when launched, these cars were so adept at flying under the radar that even insurance companies often classified them as regular economy cars. Alright, our number one spot goes to automotive royalty, the 1992 Mercedes-Benz 500e. When Mercedes hands over your family sedan to Porsche for final assembly, you know something serious is about to go down. Every single 500e was hand-built by Porsche, taking 18 days to complete. The M119 V8 engine was essentially a detuned version of the motor used in the Sauber C9 race car. 322 horsepower and 354 pound-feet of torque. Porsche completely redesigned the suspension geometry, widened the track, and equipped it with brakes that could stop a freight train. Every 500e received special connecting rods from the same supplier that provided them for Formula One cars. The oil system was so over-engineered it could handle sustained 1G cornering without starving. They even developed specific tire compounds with Michelin just for this car. Only 1,528 of these were built globally, and each one cost $81,800, about $165,000 today. To most people, it looked exactly like any other W124 Mercedes. Maybe you'd notice these slightly flared fenders or the wider wheels, but unless you knew what you were looking for, this car was practically invisible. I think that's what makes it the ultimate sleeper. And that's a wrap. Which car on this list surprised you the most, or did one of these already let you down? Let us know in the comments, because if there's one thing fans love, it's a good breakdown story. Before you go, don't forget to check out our recent video on 69 used cars to avoid buying. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and press the bell icon. Thanks for watching.